When men choose peace, it shocks the room, because for decades, men were taught that their value was measured by how much chaos they could tolerate, how much emotional instability they could manage, how much responsibility they could absorb without complaint, how many broken systems they could keep running with their own mental health as fuel. So when a man finally says, "I choose calm over chemistry, clarity over chaos, peace over performance," it doesn't just disappoint expectations, it exposes a quiet crisis no one wants to talk about. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Many modern men are not afraid of commitment. They are afraid of conflict disguised as love. They are not running from responsibility. They are running from emotional debt they didn't create, but are expected to repay for a lifetime. And when they opt out, when they step back and build a life that is emotionally stable, financially disciplined, and psychologically quiet, a mirror is held up to a generation that was promised everything, yet prepared for very little. This conversation is not about attacking women, it is about confronting consequences. Because society told women they could delay everything: marriage, emotional accountability, financial discipline, without cost. That they could prioritize freedom without structure, independence without foresight, desire without discernment. And now, as time moves forward and biology does not negotiate, reality begins to ask questions, motivation never answered. Loneliness is not sudden, it is cumulative. It is built slowly through choices that feel empowering in the moment, but isolating over time. And debt is not just financial, it is emotional, it is psychological. It is the cost of living above one's emotional means, spending validation you did not earn, expecting security you did not help build, demanding stability from men who were never invited into peace. Men are watching, quietly, carefully. They are noticing patterns. They are noticing how conflict is normalized, how dissatisfaction is rewarded with attention, how peace is framed as boredom. They are noticing that love is often presented as intensity instead of safety, stimulation instead of support, drama instead of devotion, and they are choosing differently. Older modern women are not lonely because men disappeared. Men didn't vanish, they withdrew, they recalibrated. They observed what relationships had become and asked a simple question: what is the return on emotional investment? And when the answer was stress, criticism, pressure, and endless expectation with little appreciation, men chose peace. There is a silence men reach after enough chaos, a stillness where they realize that solitude is not the enemy. It is the recovery phase, that coming home to quiet is not empty, it is healing, that eating alone in peace is better than dining in tension, that a smaller life with fewer arguments is richer than a louder one filled with conflict. This is not fear, this is discernment. Meanwhile, many women were told that men would always adapt, that men would always chase. That time was negotiable, that standards only applied one way. And now, as options narrow and attention shifts to younger, less complicated dynamics, the panic is mislabeled as empowerment, and the loneliness is blamed on men's insecurity rather than personal choices. Debt plays a role no one wants to mention. Financial debt is often tied to lifestyle inflation driven by image, not stability. Emotional debt comes from unresolved trauma outsourced to relationships. Relational debt accumulates when past disappointments are carried into new connections as suspicion, control, and emotional taxation. Men feel this. They sense when a relationship is less about partnership and more about repair work they didn't sign up for. Men today are choosing peace because peace has become rare, because peace requires two regulated nervous systems, not one person constantly managing the other's emotions. Because peace demands accountability, humility, and growth, not entitlement disguised as confidence. And men have learned that attraction without alignment is a trap, not a prize. This shift exposes a painful contrast. Women who invested early in emotional maturity, cooperation, and long-term thinking often find companionship. Women who were told they could figure it out later are now confronting later with fewer options and higher expectations. Biology does not bend for ideology. Time does not pause for self-discovery, and attraction does not reward resentment. Loneliness is not solved by louder demands. It is solved by inner order. Debt is not erased by blaming systems. It is cleared through discipline. Relationships do not fail because men are afraid. They fail because peace was never part of the offer. Men are not asking for perfection. They are asking for predictability, emotional consistency, respect, appreciation without manipulation, femininity that soothes rather than competes, partnership that feels like rest, not labor. When those qualities are absent, men don't argue anymore, they disengage. And disengagement feels cruel to those who expected pursuit. But it is simply the final stage of awareness. Men learn that explaining drains them, that negotiating boundaries invites debate, that walking away preserves energy, and energy, once protected, becomes non-negotiable. The tragedy is not that older modern women face loneliness. The tragedy is that they were never warned that freedom without structure has a cost, that independence without interdependence becomes isolation, that pride without adaptability becomes rigidity, that empowerment without wisdom becomes emptiness. Men choosing peace is not a rebellion, it is a correction, a quiet recalibration toward lives that feel sustainable, toward mornings without dread, toward evenings without conflict, toward relationships that add, not subtract. And as this continues, the dating landscape will not reward loudness, it will reward balance. Some will call this unfair, others will call it misogyny, but reality does not respond to labels, it responds to behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. The question is not why men are choosing peace. The real question is why peace was ever made optional in relationships to begin with. Why stability was framed as settling, why cooperation was mocked as weakness, why accountability was seen as oppression. These narratives sounded powerful when time felt infinite. They sound hollow when consequences arrive. Because eventually, attention fades, beauty changes, options narrow, and what remains is character, habits, financial health, emotional regulation, and the ability to coexist without constant friction. Men choosing peace are not punishing anyone, they are preserving themselves. And in doing so, they are unintentionally forcing a reckoning, one where loneliness and debt are no longer abstract ideas, but lived realities, where the noise dies down, where the narratives collapse, where the mirror stays up longer than comfort allows. And this moment, this quiet, uncomfortable pause, is where truth begins to speak. Slowly, without mercy, without apology, continuing long after denial has run out of words. Men are no longer trying to win arguments, they are trying to win their lives back. And that shift is deeply unsettling to a culture that relied on male endurance as an unlimited resource. For years, men were conditioned to believe that suffering in silence was noble, that tolerance was love, that self-sacrifice was masculinity. But endurance without reciprocity doesn't build character, it builds burnout. And burnout eventually produces clarity. What many don't understand is that peace is not passive. Peace is an active decision made after observation. Men observe how conversations turn into competitions, how vulnerability is later weaponized, how boundaries are interpreted as rejection, how emotional labor flows in one direction and is called equality. They notice that accountability is often demanded but rarely offered. And once a man sees that pattern clearly, he does not unsee it. Modern dating didn't exhaust men because of commitment. It exhausted them because of instability, because every disagreement became a referendum on identity, because every boundary required justification, because emotional calm was treated as emotional absence. Men learned that no matter how much they provided, it was never enough to neutralize resentment that had nothing to do with them. At the same time, many women were encouraged to view men as obstacles rather than allies, to see relationships as negotiations instead of cooperation, to measure power instead of harmony. And power games always produce winners and losers, never partners. When men sense they are entering a dynamic where they must constantly prove worth rather than share it, disengagement becomes self-respect. Loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being incompatible with connection. It comes from carrying unresolved anger into every interaction, from expecting a partner to be therapist, provider, validator, and emotional regulator all at once, from confusing independence with isolation and strength with resistance to softness. And debt, both literal and symbolic, tightens the pressure. Financial strain magnifies emotional instability. Lifestyle expectations rise while cooperation declines. Men notice when they are expected to subsidize choices they didn't make, to rescue situations they didn't create, to inherit consequences they had no voice in shaping. Peace, then, becomes not just desirable, but necessary. Men choosing peace are opting out of emotional gambling. They are choosing predictability over passion spikes, routines over roller coasters, long-term calm over short-term chemistry. They are building environments where their nervous systems can finally rest, where silence is not punishment but presence, where absence of conflict is not neglect but care. This is why many men appear cold or distant now. They are not disconnected, they are selective. They no longer chase intensity because they understand intensity fades. They chase alignment, and alignment is quiet. It doesn't need constant reassurance. It doesn't demand performance. It simply works. For women confronting loneliness later in life, the pain is not just about missing companionship. It's about confronting narratives that promised fulfillment without sacrifice. It's about realizing that attraction has timelines, that partnership requires preparation, that emotional skills are not automatic. It's about seeing men choose calm lives without them and wondering when choice turned into exclusion. But men did not change overnight. They adapted, slowly, after years of being told their needs were optional, after learning that expressing dissatisfaction made them villains, after realizing that peace was something they had to claim for themselves because no one was offering it. And so the divide widens, not because men hate women, not because women failed, but because peace became rare, accountability became negotiable, and cooperation became ideological instead of practical. And men, tired, observant, and finally honest with themselves, chose the one thing that didn't argue back, didn't accuse, didn't demand more than it gave. They chose peace, and in that choice, the silence grows heavier, the questions louder, and the reckoning continues, unresolved, unfolding, pressing forward without pause. What makes this moment more uncomfortable is that it cannot be solved with motivation or slogans. You cannot chant your way out of consequences. You cannot brand loneliness as empowerment and expect the body and mind to agree. Biology, psychology, and economics all move in one direction, towards stability, toward cooperation, towards systems that reduce stress rather than amplify it. Men are aligning with those realities, not rebelling against women but against chaos. Men have learned that love without respect is emotional servitude, that attraction without admiration turns into obligation, that being needed is not the same as being valued, and once a man distinguishes between those two, he becomes immune to guilt-based commitment. He no longer responds to pressure, he responds to peace. This is why many men now prioritize their routines, their health, their finances, and their solitude. Gym memberships replace arguments. Quiet apartments replace unpredictable homes. Simple meals replace tense dinners. Their lives may look smaller from the outside, but internally they are finally spacious. There is room to think, room to rest, room to grow. Meanwhile, many women were taught to maximize experiences rather than build foundations, to collect stories rather than skills, to chase excitement rather than emotional mastery. And excitement ages quickly, novelty fades. What remains is temperament, habits, capacity for cooperation. These are not glamorous traits, but they are the ones that sustain intimacy over time. Loneliness intensifies when comparison enters the picture. Watching peers settle into families while still negotiating dating apps creates cognitive dissonance. Seeing men choose younger, calmer partners is not an insult. It is a signal that peace has market value, that emotional regulation is attractive, that low conflict femininity is not outdated, it is rare. Debt compounds the anxiety. Financial insecurity limits choices and magnifies desperation. When survival stress enters relationships, romance becomes transactional. Men feel this immediately. They sense when they are being evaluated not for who they are, but for what they can fix, fund, or stabilize. And no one wants to be chosen as a solution rather than a partner. This is where resentment forms on both sides. Women resent men for withdrawing. Men resent being blamed for boundaries. Conversations turn into indictments. Empathy is replaced by ideology. And connection collapses under the weight of narratives that prioritize winning over understanding. Men choosing peace are not opting out of love. They are opting out of dysfunction. They are not anti-commitment. They are anti-chaos. They are not afraid of women. They are afraid of repeating patterns that cost them years of calm. And fear, when informed by experience, becomes wisdom. The hardest realization for many is that attraction is not negotiable. You cannot demand desire. You cannot argue someone into choosing you. Attraction responds to traits: emotional stability, cooperation, warmth, humility, accountability. When these are absent, no amount of independence rhetoric can compensate. Men are no longer trying to be everything. They are choosing to be at peace with something smaller, something quieter, something that doesn't require constant emotional management. And as more men step back, the silence becomes impossible to ignore. This silence is not empty. It is filled with unasked questions, unlearned lessons, and unprepared minds confronting outcomes they were assured would never arrive. And as time continues forward, without pause, without sentiment, the gap between expectation and reality keeps widening, pressing deeper into lives that now must sit with what was chosen, what was avoided, and what can no longer be delayed. And here is the part no one escapes. Time does not argue. Time does not negotiate. Time does not care what you were promised, what you were told, or what you believed should have been different. It simply reveals what your choices were building while you were distracted by narratives. Men choosing peace is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is what happens when a person stops outsourcing responsibility for their well-being and starts protecting their future. It is the final response to years of emotional inflation, where effort was demanded but appreciation was scarce, where stability was mocked until it disappeared. Loneliness is not a punishment handed out by men. It is feedback from life. Debt, emotional, financial, relational, is not bad luck. It is the invoice for decisions made without foresight, and no amount of anger can erase an invoice that has already come due. The world is not becoming colder, it is becoming more honest. Men are no longer sacrificing peace to meet expectations that offer no return. They are no longer negotiating with chaos and calling it love. They are no longer confused about the cost of staying where calm is treated as weakness. The future belongs to those who understand that love is not loud, power is not conflict, and freedom without discipline is just another form of captivity. Those who learn this early build lives. Those who learn it late face silence. And silence, unlike people, does not bend to emotion. Men will continue choosing peace, not because they hate women, not because they fear commitment, but because peace, once tasted, becomes non-negotiable, and anyone, man or woman, who wants partnership in the years ahead will have to meet peace with peace, accountability with accountability, and reality with maturity. Because in the end, attraction does not reward entitlement, life does not reward delay, and time, quiet, relentless, and unforgiving, always tells the truth.